Future of Finance with RPA. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Aditya Modi, who is Chief Financial Officer at Reliance Retail, that is JioMart Reliance Retail. And giving a brief introduction, he has over 15 plus years of rich experience in finance and business. He has a strong understanding of retail, e-commerce and supply chain. He has also worked with manufacturing plants and telecom. Worked in functions across e-commerce including buying, pricing, operational excellency, inventory management, supply chain management, merchandising, analytics and controllership, planning and forecasting. Currently, he is the CFO at JioMart, part of Reliance Retail. With this, please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
By virtue of being in e-commerce industry, robotic process automation has been a forcing function on me. I'm not carrying a presentation. I thought this topic is too close to my heart and I would rather share examples from my work experience that this audience can relate to and share a framework that I have used for evaluating the need of robotic process automation. In e-commerce and in retail industry, we have millions of SKUs, millions of buyers, and at least few lakh sellers. Handling this kind of a data on Excel in 10,48,576 rows and columns till IXD is just not practically possible. And hence, at different stages of my career, in different roles, I have been forced to sort of embrace and leverage technology to solve this problem, right? From an overall perspective, I would want to share 4 examples with you. The first example is around a role in financial planning and analysis division, where in one of my roles in e-commerce industry itself, I was responsible for business performance measurement and driving business performance on a weekly basis with my business leaders. Now, it is very common in retail industry, again, a lot of you would know, to have a good handle on set of predefined KPIs that you can drive on a regular basis, preferably on a weekly basis, and hold people accountable for goals, understand what is working well and what is not working well. The challenge really that we were facing was we were doing all of this in an Excel sheet. We were very early in our journey. There were no automations that we had, and hence we were forced to do everything on Excel. Now, when we were doing that on Excel sheet, my teams used to stay awake till 4 AM the preceding day of the reviews every week, right? Leading to multiple churn in team members. That's the first problem statement that I had. The second problem statement that I had was there was a lot of churn from the stakeholders. Stakeholders would challenge the numbers in those reviews, saying that, hey, this number is wrong, this number is not correct, I believe I have delivered this much. And hence the conversation in the time that the executive team was spending was not very fruitful. So these were the 2 big problem statements in front of us. We knew that this is something we have to do every single week till the time we want to run this business, till the time we want to scale this business, right? And hence what we did was we used Redshift and analytics tool to sort of ensure that data is captured in a systematic way, and then on a set of predefined metric sets, running some queries on those data sets, data is reported through that analytics tool, which is sent to everyone in the organization on every Sunday, so that our reviews are like in an automated fashion. Monday, people can go through that information sets. We set up an office hour to back it up on every Monday, let's say 1 PM. And we said, in this office hours, we will take queries, we will understand if there are any data discrepancies and stuff. Over a period of 4 weeks, we were able to completely turn this around once this whole automation setup was done, right? Now this whole thing was working in a completely automated fashion. The teams did not need to spend time, sleepless nights like the way they were spending. And the structure was in place where if there is any discrepancy or if any new metric has to be added, then those requests were taken, let's say, on every Thursday or a Friday, reviewed on every Monday with the respective set of stakeholders. And it led to a lot of productive conversations in our weekly business reviews where we can focus more on the outcomes of the business rather than whether this data is accurate or not, and rather than challenging each other on unfruitful conversations. So I think that was one of the biggest place where process automation or using bots to automate reporting helped me big time. Over a period of time, we realized that from measuring 7-8 KPIs, which is what we started with, we had to move to measure 17 different KPIs in our weekly reviews as the business scaled to multiple other businesses. We realized that we had to measure and get participation from 19 different teams, right, for these 17 KPIs, and hence holding each of them accountable, each of them responsible against goals, and measuring the performance week on week was very easy and seamless through this automation. So I think that was one example that I wanted to share with all of you. The second example that I wanted to share with all of you is on seller reconciliation. So basically, again, the problem statement was that we had a handful of sellers, but all of us would have faced this issue where even with handful of sellers, you will have disputes. You will have seller challenging you on certain aspects of your account statement, right? You would take a ledger statement from that seller, reconcile, and probably that goes back and forth, multiple rounds, right? Now, doing that with a 10 seller base without an automated process is still feasible, right? Imagine in an e-commerce setup where you have like a million seller and maybe thousands and thousands of vendors if you talk about 1P setup, right? It might just not be possible. And hence, what we decided was, are there ways in which at least our side of account statement we are able to codify and classify into various themes or various problem statements within the reconciliation statement. Just to give you an example, probably if the invoice is incorrect because of some issue, let's say a GST issue, so incorrect invoice becomes a problem statement in a seller reconciliation which is codified. And we said we will have a predefined set of rules to identify this particular problem statement, okay, which then we will compare with the seller ledger to clearly highlight what is matching and what is not matching. And what is not matching then becomes the topic of discussion with your top sellers or high priority sellers, etc. So as to simplify the process, right? What we realized was, again, we had to put our brains around charting out how do we define those rules, how do we classify various items in a seller reconciliation into codes that can be easily be comprehended by the seller, and that you can use to then problem solve that particular line item to help pay the seller, right? That was the end objective. We again turned to bots. We again identified and defined a set of rules that can help us do that. Ultimately, end outcome was for every single seller, we had that reconciliation prepared, where in an automated fashion, let's say on 20th of every month, reconciliation for last month or the month before that would come out. You give it to the seller, take the ledger from the seller, compare and identify the key disagreements between you and the seller, and you just have to solve for those disagreements to ensure that the seller is paid out. Okay. Over a period of time, what we realized was a team of 70 to 80 people who was running this show for us. We did not have to scale that team. The reason why we did not have to scale that team, despite increase in business or despite increase in seller count, was because of this automation. And I think if we did not have this automation, I don't know even if it was practically possible for us to run this process, or we would have ended with, let's say, 300, 400, 500 people. Okay. So that was the second example that I wanted to share. The third example, and this is a very interesting one, e-commerce is prone to a lot of abuse. The abuse can be buyer abuse, seller abuse, or network abuse, right? Now, as a finance controller, it would always bother you if you're leaking money on this count. This is what you call it as business waste. Rather, this money is not giving you any return, and somebody is making a mockery of your processes. What we decided to do was, nowadays bank has a process of penny drop, right, where they can just drop a penny into an account, and it will pull the name and the bank account details of that particular person, right? So what we realized was people are sharing some GST certificates, and then there are bank accounts where names and bank accounts are very different from the names which are mentioned in GST certificates. What we started doing was, we started doing this penny drop process, where we would verify the name on the bank account with the name in the GST certificate, okay, before onboarding a seller. Now, this itself, we realized that there are a lot of abusers who are repeatedly coming on board because of this gap, where GST certificate name was different from the bank account name. And this penny drop facility, which we introduced to sort of verify this, we could actually curtail seller abuse by approximately 30 to 35% of what it was before, by preventing the onboarding of these abusive sellers, right? So this was a third example on the controllership side that we have seen success on, or I have personally seen success on, being very close to this. The last one that I would want to share with you on how we have used, or how I have used in the past robotic process automation for strategic decisions. When I say strategic decisions, what I mean is decisions which are going to impact your business, it's going to impact your stakeholders for a very long period of time, right? And there is a trade-off involved. This trade-off can be in the form of top line and bottom line. Let's say you do this, probably you lose certain top line, but you're okay losing that top line because that top line is coming at the benefit of a certain bottom line, right? So one of the examples that I would want to share, which we recently did or are in the process of doing, is how to evaluate in an e-commerce setup low ASP business. Let's say SKUs which are really low on value, right? There's a certain cost that I would incur on shipping. There is a certain margin that I'm earning from my brands, but net probably I would still bleed on these SKUs, because ultimately the selling price of these SKUs is like, let's say 80 rupees, 100 bucks, or 120 rupees, right? So what do you do to evaluate this kind of a situation at scale for millions and millions of SKUs? What we did was, we again turned to bots. We defined the algorithm for every SKU. What is the customer benefit I'm getting in terms of new customers, in terms of repeating customers, because some of these SKUs do bring new and repeating customers. And what is the cost that we are incurring, right? And what is the trade-off or the formula that we want to formulate for every single SKU to decide whether we want to sell that SKU or not, okay? And we sort of configured an algorithm where at the time of onboarding itself, every SKU was classified to say, look, this SKU is not feasible to sell based on the algorithm that you have defined. It's not going to be either profitable to you, or it's not going to bring at least new customers for you. Then what's in it for you to sell it, okay? And at the time of catalog onboarding itself, we were able to identify the SKUs which are red in terms of profitability or new customers for us. Using that algorithm, there would be an email which is triggered to the finance controller and the business head for that particular line of business to either approve, which is sort of a veto the logic, okay? It's important to give this facility to the business head and the finance controller, especially if you are a new nascent business. And once they veto or they don't reply, let's say in 3 days, system would automatically not onboard those SKUs and blacklist them from onboarding for next 6 months, okay? So these are the 4 different examples that I wanted to share from my work experience across reporting, controllership, seller payments, and strategic decisions, where I have leveraged robotic process automation and it has yielded in good results. Now coming to the final part, how have I evaluated decisions on investments in robotic process automation? And it's a tricky thing, right? Because typically it would either involve spending a lot of money, or it would involve asking your product and engineering team to sideline few resources dedicatedly for finance, which is always difficult to maneuver in a business setup, right? So the framework that I have applied is the following. The first thing that I have always thought about is, will I be able to sustain or scale or achieve the business ambition that I have without doing it, To give you an example, today you might have, if you are let's say a startup in a logistics supply chain, today you might be dealing with only 10 truck drivers. You are a very small startup, you have just started. But tomorrow, if you have to deal with 3,000 trucks, 30,000 trucks, and 30,000 truck drivers, without having an automated seller reconciliation or vendor reconciliation process, probably today you may still sustain, you would not be able to scale. Okay, so that is the first framework that I have applied. The second framework that I have applied is this a process that I would end up doing for at least 12 months? Okay, or it is a one-time process. If this is a process that I would keep repeating for at least 12 months, every month, right, then it's worth investing. If it's a process which is going to end in 3 months, or it's a one-time activity, probably there's no point investing a lot. The third thing that I have used is, am I going to save at least 40 man-hours a month, which is one person, 1 week effort a month, right? Either today or in future. Okay, if I'm not going to save at least 40 man-hours a month, either today or in future, then I decided not to invest in it. So these are the 3 broad principles that I've applied to zero down on where I want to invest and where I don't want to invest. These can be different for every business, every individual, and others. But yeah, that's how I've always spent my time and energy. In finance, we have a saying, bad news should take the escalator, good news can take the stairs, right? And hence, I felt that in order to prevent bad news, you need to take the escalator, while for giving good news, you can still take the stairs. To take the escalator, maybe spending in process automation and bots for process automation is sort of imperative and need of the hour. Yeah, I can take any questions if you guys have.
Do we have any questions?
Onboarding the SKUs. So even at the first instance, you're taking the decision, or you will be taking the decision once it is there and the customers have already selected those SKUs?
No, even before listing those SKUs on my website, I would take that decision.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to do is, if customer has ordered, I would rather fulfill that order for preventing my customer experience than taking the decision of not serving the customer.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Okay, thank you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, sir.